And welcome to OnBullshit, Episode 8.
Episode 8. This is Amy.
And I'm the Panda.
We didn't introduce ourselves
I know, I was just about to say, I don't think we've done it the last few episodes, but whatever. This is getting better all the time.
our flow and content is getting better.
I like what we do here.
Yeah.
I think other people do too.
Shit the crap.
Well, today we have a couple of interesting topics. We're talking about education reform, maybe insurance, and
whatever else comes around.
And media, of course, too.
Yes. So a few episodes ago, well, I say that, in one of our previous episodes, we said we were going to talk about education a little bit. Mm-hmm. Hasn't happened yet, but we remembered today, so let's talk a little bit about education.
Where to start? We have Betsy DeVos as the new Secretary of Education under the Trump administration. Yeah. So that happened.
So that kind of boils down to there is no Secretary of Education.
So I feel like just a quick filler, like every other pick in the administration they all seem to be about the same thing. Every person he's picked to do something to
is against the office that they're being picked for.
Is exactly, antithetical to the office they're in, and they all believe in the same thing, which is privatizing various aspects of
everything,
life, and getting the government involved. Betsy DeVos hates public education, hates the idea, doesn't believe in it.
She's never had any experience with it.
Likes charter schools, likes the idea of sending people to private schools, and likes the idea of competing with, whatever your money, like, individual income can buy.
So she wants private colleges for little people.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty much. That's a big thing about, like, I think this carries over to libertarians, too. Just anybody that sees the government as, Big Brother or a big waste, or as in some way impeding on people's civil liberties. I think that carries into education, that people don't deserve a public education.
But without the government enforcing any of this, there is no civil liberties. Because if there's nothing that's going to enforce that people are, like, entitled to an education, whether they have to pay for it or not, no school is ever going to remain open. They're not going to accept any new students, and they're going to refuse to, like, teach them anything. This,
to me, and not to feel, like, too far into it, is very much like the economical argument I hear from usually right-leaning people, which is just, like, to get the government out of the economy and let the market take care of things. The government creates the market. The reason a market exists is because of the government. So
without the government,
it's a little, to me, it's just borderline, or it's just bizarre to, like, pretend like we can just, like, take government out of whether it's public education or the economy. And, like,
I feel like this is the thing that comes from people that don't understand the function of the government, the way the government works, and the purpose of the government.
I think so. I really do. I mean, there are some good arguments to be made, I'm sure, on these other sides, but, like, as far as, like, taking out the government part, like, to me, it's just stupid,
nonsensical.
And it's not worth it.
Yeah,
a debate.
It brings us back to, like, this stupid disparity of people not learning. No one is, like, specifically what we're talking about, no one knows how government works because this isn't being taught.
Right.
We're basically being taught the history of what government has done in the past, but no one knows how it works, except the people that are in politics that are older, and they actually learned this when they were in school because it was still being taught at the time.
I think there was just more of a focus on civil duty and liberties when prior parents' generation and grandparents' generations were still young.
Yeah, these people are being taught the proper way of things so they know how to work the system.
Well, and even, like, voting, right? Like, again, like, our generation still sucks at voting, which is sad to say. And we should be fucking awesome on that.
You would think, because we've seen the fallout of what happens when people don't vote.
I mean, we have all this access to technology and information before our fingertips, and yet we still can't seem to be bothered to get out the vote when it's necessary.
Yeah, and that also that leads us back to the whole shitty media reporting, because you don't know, like, you see all these reports about statistics and all these things that are happening, but it's hard to know whether the source you're looking at is actually telling the truth.
Yes. Well, I feel like kind of split on this because I think fake news is a problem, right? But I think it's a problem on social media predominantly.
Yes.
I think people have tended to carry this now, especially because and not to completely pin it on them, but mostly a lot of the Trump voters, when you have the president of the United States like standing up and basically making these accusations against these news organizations,
the big news organizations,
right
saying that they are mean, they're not nice, they only tell fake news.
Like, I don't like what I hear, so you're fake. I mean, when the president does that there are a lot of ethical questions you have to ask about
because
the guy.
You're supposed to allow the media to report on what you're doing so people are informed about what you're doing and how it's going to affect their lives.
Well, and how does that affect his voters? Because his voters are going to pick that up and they're going to say, wow, the president of the United States is saying this is fake. It must be fake. Right?
Like, even though, like, clearly over and over we have been given ample evidence on how, like, 90% of the things that Trump says is him having a tantrum.
Yes.
So, and people are, like, willfully ignoring all the evidence that they have and just saying that the media as a whole is turning against this one guy.
And the thing is, like, like you were saying before, like, there are real problems with the media. There definitely is. The U.S., like, has plenty of awful media sites. And I don't think it's because of fake news. I think it's because of lazy reporting.
Yes.
Generally. And as we've talked about before, the media's they're pulled towards getting sensational stories to get people enraged or up in arms about something.
Emotions sell. It doesn't have to be a negative emotion. It usually is. Like, a lot of the headlines are worded in such a way that they are going to evoke anger from you, irritation, something negative. Instead of saying, like, I don't know what's happening lately, but, like, instead of saying President OK's testing this bomb, the headline was mother of all bombs dropped.
Right.
That's, like, a huge difference. And it makes it sound like we're attacking someone rather than testing new military equipment.
And on top of that, like, does it bother you, like, whenever I swear to God, in the age of Trump, I feel like the media just hasn't learned any of the lessons it should have or post-election, which is just like anytime he does something, like drops bombs on a country, somehow now in the media, it's automatically seen as a very presidential thing. God. Like, he's very serious, and suddenly he gets this credit, even from, like, like liberal leading news sources, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like, how?
No.
How is, like, he might potentially start a war, but now he's a serious president. Now he's our president because...
No, he's a fucking shithead with his finger on the red button.
I mean, yeah, I don't understand where we got to this point where the bar is set so low that now that I guess he puts his signature on a military strike, suddenly he's a real president.
Okay, guys, we just finished watching Philip DeFranco's videos for this week about the Daddy of Five. The way you were talking about Trump just now, it's comparable to the Daddy of Five situation.
We're lowering the bar.
Yeah, and inciting others to, like, commit physical acts against each other.
Yeah.
For your own amusement.
Absolutely. That is, it just falls into, like, the media loves sensational.
God, if it's not being reported on here as much, but, like, the United States media as a whole, journalists, they are safe because they are posting things that are eye-catching, and when they post something about the government, the only backlash they have is the president is saying, no, you're a liar, quit asking me questions. Like I've told you before, we weren't recording, but I told you that in, like, the past few months, journalists in Mexico are being hunted down and murdered for reporting actual news of things that are really happening. They are being found in their homes and shot to death because they are exposing corrupt politicians. They are exposing, like, the drug traffickers, the drug lords, all these cartel leaders. and they are being killed.
Yes.
The United States media doesn't have that fear. They don't have to worry about, okay, if I tweet this, if I print this, am I going to still be alive tomorrow?
That's the thing, all right? Like, the whole thing about, like, have you ever seen the movie, oh boy, and the name escapes my head, of course. It was about Edward R. Murrow, and basically the start of, like, real investigative journalism. I mean, we've had, like, amazing news media figures in the past, like Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite, and people that, like, would challenge the narrative of the U.S., which I think is what the media is supposed to do, serve as a watchdog for
Yeah, they're supposed to report on the actual 100% truth of things that they see happening.
And instead, like, our media gets, I guess, bought by corporations, and, you know, instead what we get are usually fluff pieces or the sensational stories we're talking about. And here, like you said, there's no consequence, generally, to speaking out against the government. I think
there's no danger.
No. Like, some reporters, I think, are legitimately harassed. Like, people reporting on foreign wars, mostly, and, like, government spying. Mm-hmm. Like, we have spy agencies that harass them, which I think is terrible, but at least it's not like when you're in Russia or Mexico, like you said, where you can legitimately be killed for reporting against whatever the state... Or North Korea.
Like, if you're a regular citizen and anyone hears you say, like, the tiniest negative comment about the regime leader, you and your entire family are going into a work camp for the rest of your life.
Exactly. The state has the narrative, follow it, or you basically get killed.
Yeah. So, like, we are an incredibly free people here, but we let corporate media pull the wool over our eyes because they think we're going to think it's entertaining.
Exactly.
That's the thing. The headlines they use, the keywords, the catchphrases, they're all for entertainment value.
There's only, like, maybe a handful of things I can think of where I think the media has legitimately done their job well here, at least.
That's very small.
Very small. One of them, I think, actually, like we were talking about before with insurance, I think, like, they did justice to reporting on, like, the Republicans' HA plan, or it's like, you know, as some other people are calling it, the ACHA or whatever. That horrible atrocity of a plan that...
And the new plan they have?
Yeah. Well, the best part is, though, I mean, for the most part, they're pretty much dead on arrival now. Like, even Trump is just, like, given up, and I think has been convinced not to even remotely, you know, try to take credit for or embrace any of the new Republican ideas, because they're all the same. It's the same as the other Republican plans in their playbook. Privatize the medical system again, get insurance companies back to having the powers they did before, and killing regulations.
That is so dumb, though, because the people that actually need the insurance for, like, health and life or death reasons are the ones that are going to get cut out of the benefits of having insurance.
Absolutely. The way they reduce healthcare plans is to literally just tell sick people, sorry, you can't afford it.
Yeah.
If you're not rich, then you're probably going to die.
Probably.
If you have a life-threatening illness, yeah.
Better quarantine you, buddy.
I mean, that was, like, the whole plan. I mean, their whole plan, first of all, like, the reason they didn't even try and do a big reform was because all they did was change the budgeting on the plan, right? On the Affordable Care Act. And when you do that... Is that all they did? And the reason they did that is because that can't be filibustered. Whenever it comes to budget matter, you just need a simple majority to get a bill through. That can't be something that, like, the Democrats could filibuster in this case.
Did they cut the funding then? I haven't been keeping up with it anymore.
I mean, it was just, the whole thing was just basically rerouting money. So rich people got humongous tax cuts.
For no fucking reason. They don't need tax cuts.
They cut the subsidies for poor and elderly and just basically changed how they funded the system. So it would have eventually killed the Affordable Care Act because it just can't work in any reasonable way. But all they needed was a simple majority, but they couldn't get that passed because even the Republicans' own constituents were just like, what the fuck? And realized they needed this law.
We're going to kick you out of office if you vote this.
Exactly. I feel like we should do, like, a special episode just for healthcare.
Probably, because I think people forget that if you don't like the way your representative is voting, you can just get them out of office. And that's like the highest threat you have against them.
Vote them out, right?
Yeah, if they don't vote the way their constituents want, they're not going to keep their office.
I think that's a good message to end on.
Oh, we're done already?
We are. Okay. People, get out and vote, please.
Please.
For the love of God. Thank
Any God.
Any God. Whatever is good for you. Just vote.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.